Looking backwards at history, we have the privilege of a 2020 vision. How would you respond if I say that the origin of Islam could be traced to certain unintended actions by Abu Talib? Let us learn how Abu Talib's kindness, combined with a prank by Khadija and Waraka, caused the birth of Islam. Keep watching.
The totalitarian system of Islam owes its origin to a kindness showed by Abu Talib when he requested Khadija to give a job to Muhammad so that he get over from the self-centered mental illness following the rejection of his marriage proposal to Fakita bint Abi Talib. Khadija was the wealthiest lady of Mecca, and she was a widow whose earlier two husbands had died. Her brother Waraka bin Nawfal was a pagan who recently converted to Christianity and was exploring his newfound religion. In Sirat al-Halabiyah, we see that the uncle of Muhammad, Abu Talib, discussed his financial condition with Muhammad. He mentioned that he has financial strains in his life and is finding it difficult to make ends meet. He requests Muhammad to join the caravan owned by Khadija, the wealthiest lady of the town, to help her in her business. The next caravan will soon depart Mecca to go to Syria. Remember that Abu Talib had already discussed about his nephew with Khadija. As a result, Muhammad was recruited into the team of Khadija, and he was given the responsibility of managing the accounts. Muhammad entered the employment and did travel with caravans to Basra, Yemen, and Syria as part of his work. This incident actually negates the oft-repeated propaganda that Muhammad was illiterate and unlearned. An illiterate and unlearned person cannot be maintaining accounts of a business. There are many more such stories glorifying Muhammad. There is a story mentioned by one of Muhammad's caravan partner where he said that the presence of a cloud giving Muhammad shadow from the hot sun while he was going with him to Syria. This cloud was attributed to the guidance of angel Jibril. Have you ever seen a cloud which will give shadow to only a person in a group? Islam is built on these kinds of stories which are good for a laugh. It is a curious case where the Allah of Islam does everything in private. He has no public show. We see that the Qurayshis are challenging Muhammad to show them a miracle to prove his authenticity. In all those places, the Allah of Muhammad is seen making excuses to avoid being exposed. We can read those events in Surah 10 verse 20, Surah 13 verse 7, Surah 17 verse 59, Surah 13 verse 27, and many other places too. The God of the Bible continues to do so many miracles for his children even today. There are so many testimonies about God doing miracles in their lives, but nobody from them claims to be a prophet of any kind. How is it that the God of the Bible changed his working pattern if he is the same Allah as believed by Muhammad? Think about it, and you will know the answer. Why should anybody believe in an Allah who is so private? The same God who put a special cloud on the Prophet of Islam to save him from strong sun, would not save this same Prophet from being banged by a person in the Battle of Uhud which broke his teeth. Why would anybody believe in the Prophet who saw the split moon, which is nothing more than a joke? Anyway, let me take you back to the Khadija story where the other caravan traveler came and mentioned about the cloud covering Muhammad incident was reported. Khadija made mention of the same to her brother Waraka bin Nawfal. As mentioned earlier, Waraka was a pagan who became Christian recently. He had also experimented with Judaism earlier, so in short, he was a mixture of all kinds of theology. And when he heard this thing from his sister Khadija, he made a conclusion that Muhammad is the new prophet from Arabia and Jibril is his new guide. Very interestingly, this man Waraka bin Nawfal is the guy who is pushing Muhammad towards his prophethood. The identification of Jibril is also an idea from the fertile mind of Waraka. As we will continue, you will realize that Waraka and Khadija are the ones who enthrones Muhammad into the throne of prophethood. The prophets of the Bible had direct contact with God. They did not need any intermediary like a Jibril to keep giving messages to his prophet at all times with absolutely no contact with God. This system of message delivery for a book writing sounds very fishy to a Christian or Jewish mind. Anyhow, as soon as Khadija came to know that Muhammad was soon going to become a prophet of God, as per Waraka, she desired to marry Muhammad. The chain of desire goes this way. The poor need wealth and the wealthy need power. So what best method to gain power than the one which is given by a religious authority? We read in Sirat Halabiyah that Khadija sent her friend to entice him into the marriage proposal. This employee of Khadija went to Muhammad and inquired why he does not get married, to which Muhammad replies that he is quite poor and has no capacity to maintain a wife. Hearing this reply of Muhammad, his friend asked if he would be willing to marry a woman who is rich, capable, beautiful, and willing to be his wife. Hearing this, Muhammad questioned who would be that woman who would want to marry a poor man like him. That is when his friend put forward the proposal of Khadija before Muhammad. Muhammad knew that he was not compatible with Khadija, however, he agreed, knowing that very well. Even Abu Talib, his uncle, was surprised at this proposal. Khadija knew very well that her father would not agree to this proposal. Her father wanted Khadija to be married to somebody else. Still, she hatched the plan with Muhammad to get married by getting her father drunk to get his approval. The chess game duping her father was invented by none other than Waraka bin Nawfal, her brother. In the party, she was successful in getting her father drunk along with his friends of the Quraysh tribe. When he was fully drunk, she asked her father's permission to get married to Muhammad. In that drunk state, he somehow said yes, and Khadija made use of that moment to spray incense on her father for her thanks, as was the custom in Arabia those days. The conversation between Khadija and her father goes as follows.
Why would I approve of your marriage with this good-for-nothing person? He is quite poor and unworthy. We cannot get into a relationship with such a person of low social standing.
Dad, don't you know that people will start mocking you for giving the approval of marriage in a drunk state of mind? Why would you want to make yourself a joke among your friends and our society?
So what do we come to know of this incident? Isn't it pretty clear that the first marriage of the prophet was based on trickery? Why could not Khadija explain to her father that this person is a genuine prophet of Allah? Is Allah telling the world that lies and trickery is his method to get things moving? When a prophet starts his spiritual journey on the basis of lies, what should we assume? Who exactly is he the prophet of? What would have happened is that the sex-starved Muhammad and Khadija would have satisfied their desires. She needed a man in her life who would be her husband, but be under her rule and obey all her commands. What better candidate than this Muhammad? A person who is in a mental state as Muhammad is easily manipulated, especially when you dangle the strength of wealth before him. It was a mutually acceptable alliance of convenience, as Muhammad got the love and money for which he had been craving for so long. Now let me use this occasion to expose a lie that is oft repeated in Islamic circles. This is regarding the age of Khadija. I have heard many Muslims telling that Khadija was 40 when she married Muhammad. But does the records agree to that assumption? Many times, Muslims use this age difference with Khadija to justify the difference of the age of Muhammad to the 6-year-old Aisha for whatever he did with her when he was 53-year-old. They say, what is the big issue? When 40-year-old Khadija can marry a 25-year-old Muhammad, what is the problem in marrying a 6-year-old Aisha? That comparison is still unjustified to what the Prophet of Islam did with a 6-year-old girl. According to Ibn Abbas, Khadija was 28 years old when she got married to Muhammad. And that age is quite logical, as she gave birth to 6 children from Muhammad. It sounds improbable for a 40-year-old woman to bear 6 children and raise them up. Khadija and Waraka are very important figures in the making of Islam. Even after his marriage with Khadija, he lived a very abnormal life. He chose seclusion and used to wander away into the neighboring area and caves. Once when he was in the cave of Hira, he had an encounter with a demonic spirit who squeezed his neck and made him so uncomfortable that he could not breathe, and asked him to read. It is quite funny that the spirit knew that Muhammad can read when Muslims insist that he could not read or write. Nevertheless, this experience was quite traumatic that Muhammad rushed back home trembling like a scared cat and fell into the lap of Khadija, requesting her to cover him up from that evil spirit. We know that the hadiths are mostly a whitewashing mechanism used to show the Prophet of Islam in a good light. So if the hadith itself says that this experience was a traumatic experience, you can imagine the kind of horror which Muhammad had to go through. While Muhammad was in such a sick condition, it was this newly converted Christian Waraka who came to him and confirmed that the spirit which squeezed him was Jibreel and that Muhammad is the Prophet of Allah. What a revelation! Muhammad was anointed as the Prophet of Allah by none other than his wife's cousin, who was hell-bent to make him the Prophet of Arabia. Let me read for you the interaction between Khadija and Waraka. Khadija said to Waraka, "O my cousin, listen to what your nephew is going to say." Waraka said, "O my nephew, what have you seen?" The Prophet then described whatever he had seen. Waraka said, "This is the same angel, Gabriel, who was sent to Moses. I wish I were young." It needs to be explained how Muhammad is considered as the nephew of Waraka. There is something fishy in the whole explanation. Later on, we read in another hadith that Muhammad started getting revelations. But then Waraka died of old age, and at that point all revelations that Muhammad used to receive stopped, which made Muhammad's mental state unstable. He became suicidal and went on the top of cliffs to jump and end his life. Why should Muhammad become suicidal when Waraka died is beyond any normal thinking. Surely Waraka has got something to do with the prophecy of Muhammad and the spirit that was giving him revelations. Probably he was a sorcerer who used evil spirits to manipulate and control things. Khadija kept supporting the crazy life and revelation of Muhammad with the intent that he do not take it in extreme and commit suicide. But this game of Jibreel and Allah became an uncontrollable menace after the death of Khadija. She would not have thought in her wildest dream that the seed planted by her and Waraka would become this huge vehicle for Satan's plan. I would like to end this video with a challenge to our Muslim friends. The challenge is this: send me 5 good things practiced by Muhammad in his lifetime which any person can follow for a better life. It has to be appealing to the conscience of all humans and should be exclusive to the life of the Prophet. I am reiterating again, these 5 things should have been practiced by the Prophet of Islam, not just said, but practiced. Go ahead and put those things in the comment section.
We have come to the end of this video. If you have liked the content, please do punch the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Also, don't forget to click on the bell icon that will make sure that you are notified of all our latest videos. Till we meet again, may the good Lord bless you and keep you.